Well, hi, gang. Welcome to the big engagement. And I'm Brad Sugars. I'll be your presenter today, chairman of Engage and Grow. Really looking forward to covering this topic today because I think it's been a long time coming. The big engagement is not just big in our world, it's big across the entire world as everyone joins this movement. And I think that it's a movement that's time has come. It's a movement that is ready for the world. And I think you'll see as we go through today why its time has come and the benefits of the big engagement. But most of all, it'll help you understand really what it is that we as Engage and Grow are all about helping create engaged and therefore growing workforces and companies, creating happiness across the world, heart-centered businesses, and activating heart-centered organizations around the world. And really, we're an organization for courageous CEOs and courageous HR managers who will bring their teams and through our unique processes, work that through. My goal by the end of today is to add value, to make sure that you understand what is the big engagement and how does it work and how does it benefit you. But not only that, what are the steps you can take today and tomorrow and the next day to make sure that you build engagement in your team, to make sure that your team starts engaging and therefore starts growing the organization better. Obviously, we all recognize that there are major benefits to having an engaged team and engaged workforce. And that's really what we're focused on here today with the big engagement. Now, I make a massive statement here of it'll save the world. It will save the world. The big engagement will save the world. You know, if we look at business as a central hub and we look at work as a central part of most people's lives, their day-to-day, the world that they live in, then we also have to acknowledge the fact that creating a massively engaged workforce worldwide will save the world. I'll leave it up to you to follow through here with me and see what you think about this stuff as we get through today. So if you could start by just typing out in the chat window where you are based so I can see where we're at on this big engagement. What countries are we going to be engaging, I guess, is the thing. What cities are we going to be engaging across the world? And it's great to know that we are in Portugal. I know we have many here from in the United States with me. Even a couple from my Australian hometown I see on the webinar with us today. And Brazil, Canada, good to see. Thanks, Brenda, for joining in. Turkey in the house. We've got that. Mexico, South Africa. We are getting right around the world. So we're engaging all across the world is probably a very important aspect of what we do here at Engage and Grow. So let's kick into some of the learning today and start to really think about what it is that we're here to do. And if we go back to the late, great Steve Jobs, who many of the things that he created have obviously changed the world, and many of the things that he as a leader did helped change the organization that changed the world and create an organization that was capable of doing that. And so when you think back to how Steve addressed this subject and saying, you know, if we want to do great work, we have to love what we do. And it's not just what we do, it's who we do it with, it's how we do it, it's the company we do it with. And, you know, I think that's a big part of building that engagement and the great engagement across the world is to really understand that the word love is not something we should take out of business. It's something that we should make sure is essential theme to business. Having a mission that allows people to love what they do, having a company that allows customers to love doing business with you. You know, it's not just about the big engagement isn't just about the team, it's about the customers as well, getting that level of engagement right through the organization. Obviously, it starts with you, it starts with your team, it starts with how you engage the people that directly work with and report with you. And it's really important for us to understand that big engagement has no bigger result than making sure it's a phenomenal engagement for everybody. So let me just throw this video on and make sure that we give it really just a perspective of where we're going with this.
For a moment, forget the layers of life we live. We are all on the same planet, and there is only one life for all of us. We affect each other. We are affected by each other. What kind of energy do you pass to your partner, your mother, and your children who are happy to see you back from work? Are you always in a state of deficiency, fatigue, and despair? Do you have a sense of meaning and purpose in the morning? The answers are about your life engagement and, as a subheading, to your employee engagement. Employee engagement is not an issue that should only be discussed at the business level, or it is not just a matter of some ratios and concerns only the business and the manager. If we define employee engagement in its simplest definition as willing participation in work, it is about how willing you participate in life, work, and relationships. This is what we are trying to say when we say that employee engagement can save the world. You will feel good if you have a job, a life purpose, where you find meaning and value, where you feel appreciated, where you feel passionate, where you are accepted and recognized despite all the qualities you carry. The willing participation you feel inside will make you a happier person. A happier person physically, mentally, and emotionally. These are the people who are the most important need of planet Earth right now. People who feel good physically, mentally, and emotionally, who eagerly try to add value to whatever they do, who positively affect all beings in their sphere of influence. The cargo person will give you a parcel as if it were a gift, no matter what it contains. The dealer you tell about your new product will want to get back to work and start selling as soon as possible. Focus on the moment when a scientist who has dedicated his or her life to the study of whales in the Arctic tries to take pictures without caring about the icy cold. It's called engagement. And yes, employee engagement will save the world.
And let that sink in for a moment. You know, when we think through employee engagement, when we think through what it is that I guess if we really think through what it means, it's not just about business engagement, it's about life engagement, it's about across the board. Let me just switch out my microphone here. Which one is it, Joey? The Black Magic? That's the one it is. Hooray. All right, thanks, team.
We should have a better sound there now. Just give me a thumbs up if that sounds better. I was getting a couple of people saying the sound quality wasn't there. Thumbs up. Okay, good, good, good. So, you know, when we think about life engagement and employee engagement, we think it's more than that. When we think about how we are engaged at work and how that impacts how we are in our home life, how we are in our family life, how we are with our friends, and how we are across the board, it really becomes more important than just a business statistic. It really becomes more important. The big engagement is about more than just what we do and what we achieve at work. But it does start there. I know as corporations, as companies, we have the ability to impact people on a level that is far greater than just the work environment, but it starts there. So if we think about that level of enthusiasm and dedication that our team brings to their job on a day-to-day basis, if we think about how we are situated as an organization to give that person the ability to be more and more engaged, to draw out from them the best of them, to make sure that not only do they want to come to work, not only do they love coming to work, but they feel valued. There's a level of fulfillment, there's a level of significance. All of these words and these ways of meanings and feelings are very important when it comes down to getting the highest performance out of our people. Going back to that word love and how that word fits into the organization and how it fits into your customer base, how it fits into your team members is really an exciting challenge for all of us to face. Now, that being said, I think that when we sit down and we start thinking about a company and we start looking at the performance, you get a feeling for what engagement actually does on a day-to-day basis. And no matter how it comes across or how you look at this, the way of an organization all rowing in the same direction, all moving in that same direction, all got that feeling that, hey, we are going in the right way, and their thoughts on a day-to-day basis, the way they picture coming to work is more important than it's ever been before. And so as we start to look at this, we have to define the opposite to know where we're going to. It's the old theory of, a map is no good if we don't know where we start. So if we're on this boat and rowing, where are we going from and where are we going to with the big engagement? Well, I guess where we're going from is the big disengagement, if we wanted to give it a terminology, and start to understand how employee engagement rates across the world. And, these surveys give us an understanding of what that means and what that looks like. But obviously, we need to be far greater than this now. Just to make sure we're clear on something, averages are exactly that. There are standout companies out there. There are organizations where the team and the customers love doing business with those companies. And so if there is the standouts, the unicorns, the amazing companies at one end of the scale, then there is also at the other end of the scale, companies that perform way worse than this averages or these averages up on here. And so we as a team at Engage and Grow have this clearly in our crosshairs. This is something we're clearly focusing on solving. When you think of a great business, they find something they solve. There's a need that they solve, basically. And as you can imagine, this is a great need. The solutions to it are far simpler and far easier than most people would assume. But unfortunately, a lot of people say, well, how do we solve this? And they turn to technology. And I'm still to this day at a loss for how technology can change humans. It's humans that work with humans. It's humans connecting to each other that lead to that great engagement. The great Tony Hsieh, the founder, one of the founders, founding partners of Zappos, when Tony talked about the word collisions and how people could get connected and build that engagement by creating more and more collisions between people so that there were opportunities for them to collide, opportunities for them to come together, opportunities for humans to interact with other humans, we start to see what is the, I guess, founding principle of moving employee engagement or moving life engagement. More engagement requires more collisions, more people connections. And without those extra connections, it's very difficult to have those extra engagements happening with people. So, by the way, I am my team is giving me note that there are some people sending direct questions or direct message questions. If you want to send questions, feel free to do that. Happy to take questions at any time. And but what we'll try and do mostly is leave time for questions towards the end. But if there is something that I'm discussing that you say, oh, I need to ask a question, but that, feel free to dive in at any point in time. So when we think about this, and Gallup is probably one of the biggest organizations that collects data on all of this around the world. And when we sit down and we start thinking about, what is the simplest way to fix this, it doesn't take a genius to work it out. John Clifton says it probably the simplest way possibly can, and says, when we have better leaders in the workplace, that fixes employee engagement. And so you would think then that the simplest solution would be training in companies to create leaders, training to create better management and leadership in an organization. And whilst training does start the whole process, that level of heart engagement doesn't necessarily come through skills-based training. We've got to really move it to, and I know with our Leader of Leaders program, where we sit down, we start working through, how do we activate the human heart involved in this? How do we become more about that engagement and more about the human involvement? And if you ever want to watch my webinar on compassionate leadership or join our compassionate leadership program, please just do a quick search on that one online or ask the team member that sent you to this webinar here today. But understanding that whilst there's been massive work put into this, the level of improvement is only gradually moving up. Now, in some countries, obviously, it's moving faster than others, where that desire for human connectivity is very clearly seen. But in some markets, it's moving faster than others. So that being said, let's examine why. Why are the statistics the way they are? What are the causes of this low-level love of coming to work, this low-level feeling of significance, this low-level feeling of fulfillment when people come to work? I don't need to read these out to you. I know you can read them, but when you think about the level of leadership out there on the planet, what we're looking at is, very clearly put, a lot of people are being promoted without being given the proper skills and without giving the proper leadership training and the proper leadership equivalent and being enacted as a leader and coming from their hearts. There's too much of it's straight about the money. When you take care of the people, the success and money comes. If you just focus on the money, then there's a high turnover, a high disengagement rate, all of those things happen. So it really does, leadership is really the number one on the list. Obviously, then from there, a great leader would create purpose. A great leader would give people that understanding of the meaning, the why we are at work. A great leader creates a level of connection with the humans in the organization. And so that way of being and that way of an organization creating purpose and giving people purpose and having a purpose greater than just the financial win of the company is really an exciting aspect for a leader to step forward into, to be able to give people that vision of where they're going and to be able to create something that means more than just the result, the financial result specifically. And again, I go back to that word of love. Do people love coming to work, and do customers love doing business with you? Feedback, again, it's a symptom of negative. It's a negative symptom of bad leadership and bad management, meaning that there isn't feedback to the people. They don't know when they've done a good job. The only time they hear from leadership is when they've done a bad job. They sort of, well, I'll get yelled at, but I won't get praised in this organization. And thinking about how you handle praise is a very big part of how you handle engagement. It doesn't take a genius to work out that, if you consistently give praise, people move in that right direction. I still remember reading the book Whale Done. Oh, goodness, must be 20 years ago now. And, they're talking about how to train a killer whale. You can't slap it about the side of the head type thing. You have to actually give it the positive reinforcement to keep moving that in the right direction. Number 4 is not really just a symptom of leadership. It's a symptom of maybe an older way of thinking, the symptom of maybe the way business was done historically and not moving with where we need to be today. Employee well-being, looking at, if you're burning out your team, you're getting a high level of turnover of your people, obviously your profitability is lower, your customer service is lower, you're losing customers because of it. All of those sorts of things are very high on the list. So how you work with your team, how you look at the holistic human that is a part of your organization and adds value to your organization is very clear. The fifth and final one being obviously the pay and benefits. Obviously how someone is remunerated, how someone is rewarded for the job that they do is important. It is in the top 5. but it's not the most important. It's not the only one. Too often we see the solution is trying to just throw money at a problem. And no, that's not the way to do it. So to get the big engagement, and we'll move into how in a little bit, but to understand the problem makes it easier to understand the solution and how we solve this thing going out there. So if we look at just some of the more on the list type things, and we don't need to go into these ones in a lot of detail, but when we look at the list and the feeling that you would get, and if you could imagine how you would feel experiencing any one of these things, then you can experience and feel that why people get disengaged in what they're doing in an organization. If any of these things were to be a part of your day, specifically the first 5, obviously, but if any of these were a part of your day, your week, your month, you can clearly understand how that turns into someone feeling less than love for going to work. They move through from engaged or highly engaged and loving what they do, how someone who starts out that way can gradually fall to a position of highly disengaged in an organization, going from, in our scale, the green, highly engaged and growing, to the red, the highly disengaged, and rowing the boat backwards almost, and being the anchor for that boat and holding it backwards. So if we try and do a little bit of a comparison sort, okay, and we say to ourselves, well, okay, how do we see the differences in these people? And it's fairly obvious when you go into any organization, and it might be easier for you to think of a company other than your own. When you look at your own organization, sometimes it's a little hard to see the forest for the trees. But when you think about other companies you do business with or other companies that you frequent or go into, it might be easier for you to notice the differences in the two sides of the equation. I think if I just some of the ones that for me, I think are very important. The fifth one down, the motivate themselves and others. You know, an engaged employee is someone who you find who's motivated to do the work, but they consistently remotivate. They consistently find reasons to keep growing and motivate others. You know, if we want to pull a workforce down, we can throw that demotivated person in. But if you throw that highly engaged person, they can bring the team forward. You know, when there isn't that highly engaged person, that one negative will spoil the barrel, as you know, the old rotten apple type thing. Whereas that one highly engaged person can bring that team forward and create other highly engaged people. And I think it's important for us to look at this from a perspective of how do these people feel when they experience these things, to think through exactly what is going through their mind. It's easier for a highly engaged person to do high quality work. It's easier for them to give more care about the company. It's easier for them to care more about the customer and produce a better result for the customer and the customer experience. You know, and they're willing to, and I think the bottom one's important, they're willing to acknowledge their own mistakes rather than try and hide them or make excuses, because they feel like the culture of their organization is one of growth. Their culture of their organization is one of, yes, you will make mistakes because we are growing and we are doing new things. And it's not just one of, you know, oh, you made a mistake, you better hide that, otherwise you'll get in trouble type thing. I really love walking into companies, and maybe you can think of one or two. What's one or two companies that you've done business with where you've seen that high level of engagement? What's one or two companies that you've done business with where you've seen the people love coming to work, where you see and you've experienced this, you've experienced it as a customer, as a consumer? How is it that that feels different to the other companies? And then when you take a look at that, not only do you see how it feels different, but you can also then see the business's success and the rate of success of that company versus the rate of success of another company. If any come to mind, just type them in for me and give me a bit of an idea as to where it is you're seeing it. As a frequent traveler, I notice this in certain hotels around the world versus other hotels. As a frequent traveler, I also notice it in airlines across the world, and some of them that do a phenomenal job of having engaged employees, and others that well, let's just say disengagement is high in those organizations. And so that to me is a big part of what it is that makes us, you know, what makes the big engagement project something that I'm so passionate about, and something I hope you'll join me on and have your team and your company sign up for the big engagement and become a part of creating that holistic place where people look at it. Now, final one to take a look at to give us an understanding of the flip side. So if we start with the bottom side of this and start thinking about why does this happen? So if we say the bottom side, 58% less patient safety incidents. So if you're looking at it from a medical business perspective, why is it that an engaged workforce creates so many less incidents? Why is it that an engaged workforce creates much less absenteeism? Why is it that they create much less turnover of staff, much less turnover of not just staff, but customers, obviously, when you have staff turnover, defects, safety problems, shrinkage or theft problems happening in an organization? All of these things come about when we have a scenario that has a highly disengaged group, or a disengaged group, or even a group that is not fully engaged has these things. So when we flip it over and look at the positives, though, of positive engagement, we say, well, hang on a sec. It removes a lot of negatives, but it also adds these other aspects to it. And I think that the big engagement is exactly that. So which one of these statistics is one that surprises you is probably the big question for me. So type it in. Which one of these actually surprises you when you sit down and you look at it? You know, when I sat down and looked at it, higher profitability, higher sales, higher productivity, none of those surprised me in any way, shape, or form. I think that the one that surprised me most was probably the decrease in safety, the problems with safety of the higher engagement. You know, it makes sense to think about it, but at 64%, that's quite a phenomenal amount of change in safety by creating employee engagement. And I guess that's a big part of it. When we turn it around and we move from that disengaged workforce and we actually take the time, energy, and effort to create connectivity amongst the people in the organization. And again, the way we do that at Engage and Grow through our 12-week programs, through our creation of great leaders, we get to see the emotional change and that emotive shift in humans, and the way that the humans, those collisions, those connections, those things that happen on a day-to-day basis where people actually become more interactive with each other, that allows for further growth of them as humans and further growth of the organization. It keeps coming back to that word that I started us with, thanks to Steve Jobs, and that is the word love. How much they love work, how much they love working with the people they're with, how much they love helping the customers that they get to deal with, the consumers, the clients. And that all creates a very different thing. So Brenda, you said the customer loyalty increase. Yeah, look, the amazing thing about it is when there is employee engagement, there is customer engagement. It's no more complex than that. If we can get our employees loving what they do more, if we can get them highly connected to their team, to the organization, to themselves, to the purpose, the passion of what the organization stands for and where it's going, it allows the customers to connect at that deeper level as well. And I think that's an important one to keep us in mind for all of us. So let's think about productivity. Obviously, profitability and productivity are things that go hand in hand. You know, fortunately or unfortunately, I trained as an accountant as a young man and qualified to become I left university qualified to be an accountant, and you know, it was very much about the profitability. What, you know, 30 years of business ownership and running companies have very clearly shown me is that when people love what they do, they have higher productivity. When I build my people, they build the company. When you take care of the people, they feel better about what they do. They feel better about themselves. They feel better about their team, about the organization. therefore they get better results. And so it's really an interesting aspect of just how much higher productivity there is by creating a level of engagement. Now, one of the things, though, that has stood out for me over the years around this big engagement is that, well, how can I say this politely? A lot of CEOs and business owners and other executives and even frontline team members seem to make it the accountability of the HR team to say, okay, human resources, it is your job to fix employee engagement. Now, I'm not sure that you've ever tried to fix employee engagement. What you have to realize is that the growth of the humans in the organization is basically something that everyone in the organization is accountable for and responsible for. Everyone from the number one person in the company. And if I can tell you a fun little story of going into a particular company where the CEO sat me down and asked my advice around changing the culture of the organization and growing the company and all of the different aspects of it. And he said, you know, I just need you to fix my people. And he subsequently asked me a question. He said, how long do you think it'll take to fix my people? And I said, you know, maybe an hour or two. And he looked at me very like, what do you mean maybe an hour or two to fix my people? I said, well, yeah, it should take maybe an hour or two. Now, it's going to take me at least a few months with you first, then it'll take me an hour or two with them. Now, obviously, he was not as excited about that statement as I was, but the reality of most organizations is that it's not a singular team or a singular person. It starts with the number one team member in the company, the CEO. It starts with the owner. And unless they are willing to, or you are willing to embrace employee engagement, unless you have the courage to take on the facing of employee engagement, then no one else in the organization can. You know, I've had conversations with HR managers, and I know my team around the world gets this a lot, where a human resource manager has been tasked with fixing engagement, but there's no buy-in from upper management. It's like, all right, first job is we have to sell this up the chain. You can't be good at going down the chain and not just going up the chain. You actually have to impress upon the people in the C-suite that this must be done at all levels. And it starts in their room. It starts in the boardroom and works from there. So, but it's not just management. It's not just HR. It's the entire organization. And so how you educate the entire organization into the big engagement is something that is a step-by-step program, changing an organization's culture and, you know, taking this right through. And it doesn't just start with your existing team. It's also got to look into your recruiting methodologies, your induction, your onboarding. How are you bringing people onto the team? How are you even selecting people to join the team? And that goes back to, again, where you said, you know, the second biggest creator is a lack of purpose. And so as the C-suite, let's start with the first things we can do to move this. The first thing, obviously, is looking at where is the organization going? What are we aiming to achieve as an organization? What is the purpose of this company? And again, it's got to be greater than just money. It has to be more than that. It has to be about what you're aiming to achieve as a company. Giving people a clear vision of where we're going and how, and it's important. Giving them a clear vision of who we are and why we do what we do. It's not just about what we're doing, it's about who we are. It's about why we do what we do. Defining your agreed values, defining your core culture, defining all of those things allows you to become a different style of organization when it comes to recruiting, a different style of organization when it comes to building your people, those philosophies. And so as an executive in any organization, we have to be very clear on those 5 negatives and how we turn those 5 negatives into 5 positives for the organization. Doing leadership growth programs, you know, even starting with new leaders and saying, okay, where are our leaders coming from? And looking at the aspiring young people in the organization and putting them through programs. All of these things impact the culture. All of these things impact how we start the process of creating employee engagement. If I was to give any C-level executive or any manager or anyone in any team a very simple piece of advice to start employee engagement, it would be to just give people thanks, to just simply every day, twice a day, start acknowledging people for the work they do that is good, start acknowledging people for the positives in the organization. Just start moving in that direction. And eventually you get a roll on type thing. Eventually it's like, you know what, we're on a roll. We're moving in this direction, and just keep focusing your attention on the positives. Not, you know, I set a goal of achieving 10 things and I only got 8 done, and therefore I'm going to beat myself up over the 2. No, celebrate the 8. Don't say, oh, well, I didn't get 10. Celebrate that you got 8. Celebrate your team moving in the right direction. All of these things show that you take accountability and responsibility for employee engagement in your organization. So let's understand a little bit more about what got us here. We go back a few years, and obviously we've seen, even prior to the COVID pandemic, there was a gradual move from the baby boom generation into the Great Resignation, but it became very obvious during that time. And of course, since then, it's been given many different names of, and even the one I like most personally is the Great Rethink. You know, people re-choosing their career. What do they want to do? And obviously we've seen the opposite now of people saying, well, I want to be back in the office and all of these things. But if we understand this phenomenon of the Great Resignation, if we use that terminology for it, if we understand this phenomenon, then we understand where we're at and what got us to where we are, being that previous to the big engagement, we had the big disengagement, I guess. And then the Great Resignation was almost a way of saying, this is something that is very obvious for us now. It was, maybe you didn't know the statistics of 21% average. Maybe you didn't know those things, but the Great Resignation makes it very obvious to us as to where this has gone. And so if we think about the heart and soul of the people in the organization, because obviously people are the heart and soul of an organization, the level of people's thinking over this period of time has diminished even further. We're 14 percentage points less likely to find a job fulfilling. Like they have less hope than they did before. And that to me is one of the things we're sitting here going, maybe the big engagement is, maybe we're too late. No, we can't possibly be too late. Hopefully we're just in time to help you and help your team do that. I mean, if we're now 11 percentage points less likely to feel that you can truly be yourself at work, it's now becoming like, no, please stop. Let's build, let's go the other way. And that's why I want to say to everyone who's here with me today, I want to invite you on a journey. And, when people see that they're 9 percentage points less, their hopes and their fears are saying that they are less hopeful now of being fairly rewarded financially. And of course, now we've got inflation kicking in, and it's like, oh my goodness, is the big engagement too late? Are we getting into this point of saying, no, we can't possibly solve this thing, it's too big? Well, I'd like to put out an invitation, okay? I would like to say, if we go out with the Great Resignation and in right now, I'm inviting you in to the Great Engagement, and it's almost an invitation that you can't refuse. It's like the old joke of, I'm making you an offer that's too good for you to refuse. Well, yes, my acting skills are not that great, I get it, but I think you get my point, is that if these statistics are allowed to go on, if this great disengagement that was a reality previously, and the great resignation just showed that and made it obvious to us. If that's allowed to continue, well, we can't allow it to continue. We can't allow it to be too late. It's almost, we must not just extend an invitation. And by the way, by extending the invitation to you, I'm asking that you also extend an invitation to join the big engagement to everybody you know in the business world. Show them that video and share with them what engagement can look and feel like out there in the workforce. Give them a different perspective on what it is. Now, if you haven't already, by the way, and I'll get my team to put it in the chat notes. If you haven't already, what I'd like you to do is to take a look at our manifesto, okay? The Employee Engagement Manifesto, I think, is really important. So if you haven't downloaded it, please, the team will put the link in there. We've got that, Sarah, someone can pop that link in for me. The manifesto is really what we're saying. If you join the big engagement, this is something I'd like you to download, share amongst everybody you know in your business, share it with everyone and talk about it. It takes courage to talk about these things. It takes courage to step up and talk about it. And, you know, different areas of your life where it needs courage to talk about things. I know for me personally, my wife and I, unfortunately, were caught up in a mass shooting here in Las Vegas and at the Country Music Festival, Route 91. And it took courage for both of us to talk, not just with each other, but to go and actually seek help and get through these things. It takes courage in a business to have a conversation around engagement. It takes courage to survey. And if you really, if you believe that you have that courage, please join with us, sign the manifesto, share the manifesto with your team. And even maybe one step further, have a chat with one of the team at Engage and Grow and discuss doing a survey in your organization. Find out the level of engagement. You might be surprised, okay? Now, sometimes you're surprised in a negative way, and sometimes you might be surprised in a positive way. The surprise might be, hey, we're more engaged than you thought we were. Or the surprise might be, hey, we've got more work to do here than we thought we did. But take the manifesto, click that button, download the manifesto, read the manifesto, and take action on it. You know, it's like if you can print your card, download again and put your name on this and share it on your LinkedIn profile, share it out there with the world, talking about that you are part of this movement. You know, my perspective is that people make change. People change organizations. And it starts with just one person. It doesn't take 1 million people to make massive change. It takes one, you. It takes you changing first. It takes you being willing to read and sign the manifesto. It takes you putting your name on the big engagement and saying, hey, I'm part of the big engagement. I support the big engagement because I believe people are the shift and people will create that shift. So read and sign the manifesto, but do more than that. Discuss it with people, talk about it, have the courage to face these statistics with, again, some level of knowledge. Or if you, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but if you're sitting there and saying, maybe what I need people to do is to watch Brad or share the video from the great engagement that you'll see again on that website. So if you want to do the survey, if you want to download all of those things, please just get back in touch with your Engage and Grow team member and make sure that as a coach, they get to chat with you on that. So the big engagement, is it something that you want to join? Well, let's go backwards a step. I believe, based on what I've shown you here today, it's not something that you really have a choice as to whether you join the movement or not. It's like, yeah, I'd better join that movement because life is important, humans are important, balance is important, creating a engaged workforce is important. Creating an engaged planet is important. Helping people become engaged in their work and therefore more engaged in their life is important. Now, when you sit down and take a look at the core, again, trying not to be too blunt, but when we tick the box and go, yep, that's done, of brushing your teeth. Yes, it's done for this morning. We're still going to have to do it again this evening, and we're still going to have to do it again tomorrow morning. It's like, you know, I still go back to the old quote. I think it was Zig Ziglar who said, you know, motivation wears off. That's why we believe, you know, it's the same as brushing your teeth does type thing. That's why I believe we should do it every morning and every evening type thing. And employee or team member or life engagement, the big engagement is not something you tick a box and go, wow, we're done. It's not that way. It becomes a core of your culture. It becomes part of the who you are and why you do what you do. And when we feel at that level, then we get to understand what we're doing. It's changing the way we feel and becoming better as people. And there is a great spiral to it as well, though. You know, you've always heard of the term a downward spiral. Well, with this, I believe there's an upward spiral. As you get more engaged, you get more growth. And as you get more growth, you get more engagement. And, you know, you bring in bigger people and better people and more excited people, and they join and they're more motivated and all of these things. It's not that they're better than the ones before. It's just that they're better qualified to join this company and this movement because they understand where you're going and who you are and what you stand for today. The vision is clear. The culture is clear. The agreed core values are very, very clear. So that then brings us to, you know, that question. And again, I go back to, do you even have a choice to join the big engagement type thing? I don't believe that anyone has a choice. The Great Resignation, or whatever term you want to use for it, has reorganized the planet. The virtualization of our workforce has reorganized the way the world does work and how we need to do work. And that's why I think, you know, our stuff on the Compassionate Leader, that was my webinar last month, or, you know, looking at all of these different aspects, the leaders programs and all of these things, we come back and we say, okay, how do we work with our team? How do we focus on the great people who are here now and build from there? How do we use the people that love our company and are part of our company today and take that and drive it forward and get the company growing from that perspective? I think it's really important to do that. Just FYI, if you want to throw in questions, gang, please type them in now. I know I got a couple earlier from direct ones, but if you've got any, you want to just put them into the chat window, please feel free to do that now, and I'll get to questions in just a moment. So as you step into the big engagement, and make sure you take that manifesto and have conversations with people, share this webinar or the recording of this webinar, share the video I played at the start of the webinar with people, and have the hard conversations. You know, it's not easy sometimes to do it, but I was taught many years ago, the term NICE stands for nothing inside me cares enough. You know, and sometimes in business, it's not the time to be nice. Sometimes it's the time to address the elephant in the room and have the conversation and get to that courageous conversations that we need to have to move engagement forward, to acknowledge this is where we're at, but this is where we can get to. And as you grow yourself and you grow your people, you build a better world and you build a better place and a better workplace. Everyone around you benefits from that. So let me dive to questions that people have. And if I just go to the first two that were sent direct, if I scroll back to those. Oh, okay. So looking at the statistics, the question is around the statistics for employee engagement. Why do I perceive there's different engagement in different countries? I think it's just when it became a priority for different marketplaces. You know, some markets, it became a priority of employee engagement sooner than it did in others. And therefore there was recognition of what it could be. I mean, if we go back in history and we start looking at people like Anita Roddick with The Body Shop. We start looking at organizations where, and I mentioned him earlier, Tony Hsieh, who looked at changing the culture of organizations. And then Tony took on not just organizations, he took on the whole of downtown Las Vegas and said, how can I change the culture of the entire thing? And, you know, I think that when people get into it earlier, obviously there's results earlier in that marketplace. This question I love, and thank you for sending it directly through. I don't want to name the people that send the ones direct, but why do I use the term courageous when it comes to a CEO or it comes to a HR person around employee engagement? I guess I use the word courageous because I don't know about you, but if I was the leader of an organization and I was to ask my team how I was doing, get that 360 review, it takes courage to get a 360 review. It takes courage because courage is not acting without fear. It's having fear and doing it anyway. It takes courage to ask for feedback, or as my good buddy Marshall Goldsmith calls it, feed forward. You know, to take that information and move forward with it, to be able to take it and grow from it, I think is really important aspect of what it is that we as people have to do. So yeah, to as a CEO, to acknowledge that engagement is something that you want to focus in on will make a big difference in the organization. But in the first month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe it takes a bit of looking with deep introspect into what has got you here. And it's that whole what got you here won't get you there philosophy. But I think the time for the big engagement has come. So yeah. Any last questions popping through, team? Any direct questions in there? Oh, one last direct question. Feel free to just put them in the chat group as well. Okay, so the question is around the process of actually how does Engage and Grow help humans change? Okay, so most of the time what we do is we work with a company or we work with an organization to come in and work with a group of somewhere in the vicinity of a dozen of their key team members. And we start a process over 12 weeks of bringing out the leadership and the engagement. It's not a notebooks and pens scenario. It's actually an activation, heart activation. It's conversations. And it's opening the door to those great conversations that opens that engagement amongst the people and brings that growth through and brings it forward. It does start with some very scientific based stuff though, where we start with surveys and in the middle we survey again, and at the end we survey again. And you can see many of the case studies online from some of the biggest companies in the world down to some of the smallest companies in the world. And I think it's really exciting to watch over the 12 weeks and feel the difference in an organization and feel that culture shift that happens. And to really feel that engagement start working, it's the whole process of engagement or the Engage and Grow system started in the sporting world. So yeah. Oh, just got another one through. Oh, leadership programs. Yes, we do what we call a Leader of Leaders program. We also have diversity and inclusion programs. We have programs in the sales arena. We have programs in the young. So there's many different programs. If you take a look on the website, you can have a look at all of those. But the leadership program is really working one-on-one or one at a time with leaders in an organization. We can do it in groups formats, but usually it's working one at a time. So listen, to finish up here today, I want to ask you to join the big engagement. I want to invite you to be a part of the big engagement. Watch the videos, share the video, read the manifesto, share and sign and share the manifesto. Discuss it though. That's the big thing. Having the discussions around what you see in the video, having the discussions around what you read in the manifesto, and really stepping up with your team to have those hard discussions. Sometimes the best way to have the hard discussion is to invite one of my Engage and Grow teammates to come and have the discussions with you and lead that, because sometimes it does take a facilitator or a coach to help make that a reality. Anyway, thanks for being here with us today. I hope you join the big engagement. I hope to see the real need for it right now. And that's where we're moving to. But as we said at the beginning, and I hope you agree with me now, that engagement can and will save the world.